I feel like this is a Cardinals game that I can talk about and we can see. I'll take the temperature. I'm sure the temperature of everybody is you're upset about the way things are going, and rightfully so. Tonight was a game that the Cardinals didn't play poorly, and they still lost. They pitched poorly. They also had a few things happen to them on the pitching side that were unfortunate. Miles Michaelis in particular didn't pitch great, but he was solid. And then this will be one of the times where you look at soft contact, and we always kind of talk about Miles Michaelis. Oh, it was the soft contact that got him. Come on, those last 2 hits that he gave up were about as soft contact, bad luck as you can get, but it got him to 100 pitches. It facilitated Ollie Marmol going to the bullpen, and then Kittredge gave it up. And the pitches he threw were not sharp. The slider that Kiermaier hit was the pitch of the game, and it was not one that went in the Cardinals' direction. So that happened. If you're watching on Twitter, retweet it. And if you're watching on YouTube and you have a Twitter, feel free to go to Twitter and retweet the stream over there. But if we've got comments, if we got questions, let it fly. Nathan says, what temperature is equivalent to apathy? Yeah, I think that's where it might be for a lot of fans. And if that's the case, that's okay. Because, look, right now, the Cardinals aren't giving you a lot in terms of what to invest in. And I wrote my story tonight from Busch Stadium before leaving. My story for KMOV tonight, titled it, Cardinals Miss Out on an Uplifting Win, Fall to Dodgers for 5th Straight Loss. This would have been a nice little win if the Cardinals were able to get it, and it was right there on the table in front of them. You think about the way that the Cardinals approached this game from an offensive perspective, and you had the lefty on the mound, Wrobleski, for the Dodgers. Another one of those young pitchers that they have to call upon right now due to injury, and by the way, there's probably going to be another one tomorrow based on the new injury news about Tyler Glasnow. I mean, you came into this series thinking, game 1, all right, it was TBD for the longest time. And then game 2, it's going to be Glasnow, game 3, Kershaw. And you're like, better win game 1 because pitching matchup-wise, it's not going to get any easier. It still may not. Bobby Miller, I think, is on the taxi squad for the Dodgers, so is he potentially the option for Saturday? If anybody has reported or seen that answer, go ahead and throw it in the comments. I have not before logging on here to do this stream. But you kind of said that's the one that you want to get is Friday night. And the offense, you stack 7 right-handers in the lineup against a lefty. We know the story by now. The Cardinals have not been able to hit lefties all season. Well, tonight they did. 3 right-handers hit a home run. Goldschmidt, Mason Wynn, also known as Blaze. That's kind of the Players Weekend quirk. They don't have special jerseys anymore for Players Weekend. I think that's a Nike Fanatics issue. Kind of takes away a little bit of the fun out of Players Weekend, at least I think for the fans watching at home. You do have the fun baseball bats that they can use. Bobby Witt Jr., I know, used a Pablo Lopez bat from Backyard Baseball, which I also saw that Backyard Baseball is maybe coming back again. If that's a thing, I will be streaming Backyard Baseball from the YouTube channel. That's a thing that will have to happen. Love that game back in the day. But he had the Pablo Lopez wrap on his bat. I saw Bobby Witt hit his 25th homer. Shohei Ohtani, quiet day at Busch Stadium. For the Cardinals to get a quiet day from Shohei, be able to tamp him down a little bit. Miles got him on 11 pitches in the first at-bat of the game. For that to happen, for you to get 3 home runs from Goldie, from Mason, Blaze, Wynn, and from Pages, an absolute bomb from Pages to center field. As Brian on Twitter said, that ball had a family. So just think about that, Pedro. That's all I'm saying. Really good to see that. That's what you want, right? You want your righties to be able to beat up on lefties, and the Cardinals did that. It was good to see. There were positives in this game. The game was there for the taking. You're up 4-2 at that point. 6th inning comes. All right, Mookie Betts is going to get you. That's going to happen. Mookie Betts is going to get you. And it doesn't have to be just a sweeping indictment on your game. It's just one of those things that's going to happen, right? But then from there is where it gets a little bit annoying, a little frustrating. The hit to Gavin Lux that was Michael's almost had it, first of all, and then Mason Wynn on the first base side of second almost had it. And I look at the StatCast. That wasn't like quote unquote softly hit. It was 95 or something off the bat, but it wasn't. It was certainly like beat into the ground, something that if it's just hit in the right spot, you're out of the inning. He was 2 outs, nobody on, 0-2 count in the 6th. And then the second hit was a 5-hopper off Will Smith's bat, and you look at the pitch, executed perfectly, slider off the plate away. That was an example of bad luck. But the point I want to make is that the Cardinals are too far gone right now with where they are and where they've slid to in the standings to go, oh, bad luck, just one of those games. They can't have any more just one of those games. At least it feels that way. Michael has said in the clubhouse tonight, was asked by Katie Wu about just the balance in the notion of urgency, because you know where you are in the standings, versus trying to just do your job every day the way you always do. Like, what's the heat like? What's the temperature? It's a great question. And it was referenced that, look, he's been part of teams that have won before, 2021, as an example. And he kind of laughed and said, rather not wait till we have to win 17 in a row. And then he said, I don't know how often that happens. I don't think maybe that often. And I've made the joke on this show before. The Cardinals have used up that one for the century. I mean, they've used that 21st century accounted for when it comes to 17-game win streaks. They've used their allotment. I don't think another one is coming. The other part of it is, even if this Cardinals team had the pieces to put that together, the schedule right now is going to make it difficult, right? The Dodgers played a pretty good game. Cardinals played largely a pretty good game. A few mistakes here and there, and some things that you can't even necessarily classify as mistakes, but they cost you anyway. Like the Victor Scott play in the second inning. I'm not really going to be harsh enough to say that's a mistake. He almost made a sensational play. He almost robbed the home run. Ultimately didn't, but he was close to doing it. But that ends up being the difference in the game. If you want to take it that as an example of maybe not even a play not made, but it technically is a play that they did not make. So that's one of the moments where you go, in retrospect, if it's in the palm of his glove. It's almost like he over jumped it. But he timed it so well. The collision was a mammoth one against the wall and couldn't hold on to the ball. And then the play later in that inning, look, the Walker throw to Pages. I tweeted, I said Pages couldn't hold on. That's how I characterized that play. Went back and watched it a few times with Matt Pauley in the press box. We were kind of taking a look. They did charge Jordan Walker with an error on the play. He kind of short-hopped Pages at the plate. And I think the reason there has to be an error is because the runner advanced, right? Like, it's not necessarily the bang-bang play at the plate. I think he would have been out. Clean throw, clean catch, tag. I think he had him by multiple steps. Had to try to rush the play, couldn't corral it, ball gets away. That's where the error comes in because the batsman advanced to second. But that's a spot where I think you could trade an out for a run if that gets executed. And so you kind of leave that inning going, man, there were some plays left on the field here. Not because I think in both cases it would have been a really good play. Great play if Scott can make it in center. Walker made a strong throw, but I think he's got to time the hop maybe a little bit differently. I think it's a tough error to give him, but I understand why somebody has to take one if the runner advances from first to second. Official scorer's got to give it to somebody. I thought that's one I wanted to see Pages come up with, but at the same time, it was a short hop. So if anybody had tweeted that, to me, that was like, all right, yeah, I see it. I understand, and it's just one of those things. Too many, just one of those things, though, for the Cardinals kind of adds up and puts them in a bad spot, right? It's tough because you can look at tonight's game, and in a vacuum, I would say tonight's game, not one to be overly upset about in terms of the way they played. You got to admit, you might be the most pessimistic Cardinal fan out there, but you got to admit they showed some grit. They showed some want to tonight trying to come back in this game. Even after that 5-run fifth inning against Michaelis and Kittredge, they come back in the bottom of the sixth and they put together a rally. 1-out rally, 1-out base hit, and then there's a strikeout of Walker. Come back and get another one with Pages there. Donovan with the first RBI, Pages with the second one. They're within a run. Victor Scott hits it on the nose, takes Kiermaier to the track, end of the inning. They don't get another hit for the rest of the game. 2 walks over the final 3 innings, didn't get any hits the rest of the game. That's all she wrote. But the offense largely, it did its job today, right? You want to see, when you're in that situation down 7-6, you want to see a rally, spark something with a walk, whatever they're able to do. That's what you're looking for. But, I mean, if you would have said, hey, Cardinals are going to score 6, they're going to have 3 home runs off the starter from this right-handed heavy lineup, and they're going to have a moment later in the game where they rally to be able to put something together, have a 2-out RBI hit. They're going to get a couple of hits with RISP in this game against the Dodgers, and they're going to score 6 runs. You say, I mean, that's a game you got to win. It's a game you got to find a way to win, regardless of who's on the mound. But with Michaelis on the mound, and look, his stuff was moving tonight. I would even say the last pitch he threw to Will Smith, low and away, executed that pitch. It's just one of those things. But like I said, you're too late in the season to have one of those things. It's bleaker than bleak if you look at the standings. They were 8.5 out, and then the Brewers won, so that was 9. Cardinals were dormant yesterday. Dormant is not the word that I was trying to say. I don't know what it is, but it wasn't dormant. Anyway, Cardinals were off yesterday. Milwaukee then wins again tonight. Cardinals lose. Suddenly the NL Central is looking like everybody thought it would. Kind of mediocre, kind of mid. Only the Brewers are above 500. They're better than we thought they would be. It's time to admit that. Everybody else below 500, though. How about that? Cubs, half game behind the Cardinals. The Pirates, I think they lost 10 in a row within the last week and a half or so. They finally won today. But the Cardinals are only 2.5 games ahead of a team that just lost 10 straight. That's where you're at right now, Cardinals fans. So that's my rant. I'm sure there's more to talk about. We can talk about Kittredge. If I haven't said it yet, brutal. The slider that was middle to Kiermaier, brutal. We can talk about, Ollie shouldn't have pulled Michaelis when he did. Should have let him keep going. We can talk about, Ollie should have pulled Michaelis sooner. We can do that every game. There's always going to be, in a loss like this, that moment where you look at it and say, did Ollie make the right decision with pitching? I am not too up in arms about it tonight. I really am not, because I am old enough to remember the times where Cardinals fans see Michaelis pulled early because Ollie has been pretty on top of it, knowing the stats through the third time through the order. He hasn't given him all those opportunities this year. Sometimes it looks like he's cruising along, but they'll still pull him a little bit prematurely, or what feels like prematurely, because of the notion of third time through, or when he gets that pitch count elevated, sometimes things tend to go wrong. That's been somewhat of a trend for Michaelis, right? So tonight, you have the feel for the game and the way it's going. Yes, it's that part of the order's coming up again, 2 through 4. Mookie takes him deep. That's going to happen. But then he settles in, and he's literally 2 outs, 0-2 count to be able to get through 6 and give you a real good chance to set up your bullpen and to have a shot to win this game. Folks have talked about it in the comments. Romero looked really good. That's good to see. Libby looked really good again. So, there were certainly those positive elements that you can take from this, but it was that spot in the 6th inning, and look, I'm old enough to remember the times where people complain about Michaelis getting pulled early and then the bullpen blows it. I think it's so easy. Every time you know the result, it's easy to criticize the manager because you know what happens already. So there are times where I would look at it and say, yep, that was a questionable pitching move. Tonight, I really didn't have it, especially when you look at the pitches that got Miles Michaelis. Mookie Betts, that was one thing. But the rest of the inning, he was still looking sharp, and he looked sharp before the Mookie at bat. And he was at 100 pitches. We asked the questions. Ollie said, look, at that point, 2 hits in the inning after the homer, you have to pull him. But he looked good to that point, and even looked good as it was happening. I've watched the Will Smith pitch multiple times. It's a 5-hopper to short, and if it was hit right at Mason Wynn, I think it's an out. But it was to his left, up the middle. There's just nothing he could do with it. I thought maybe in retrospect, would he have like to try to pull off a miracle to try to get the guy like Flip at second, but he's going against the grain across his body. It would have been really difficult. So that is what it is. And then you bring in Kittredge. It's a righty, Miguel Vargas. It's not Vargas, Rojas. They traded Miguel Vargas. They still have Miguel Rojas. My bad. Rojas is up. Right on right matchup. That's what you want. You're not thinking about, well, what happens if he gets on base and then Lefty has to face Kiermaier's a lefty, gets to face Kittredge. And Kiermaier's got a sub 600 OPS on the season anyway. The splits are irrelevant. They're both in bad spots. If you've been bad against lefties, bad against righties, Kiermaier's not had a good season. So you're just thinking right on right. Let's get a fresh right-hander in. Everybody had the off day yesterday. It was kind of interesting post-game, Ollie answering questions about the bullpen and basically saying, look, yeah, they're healthy, but they've been stretched pretty thin. And, anytime you're able to try to get a guy through that 6th inning so that guys don't have to go 1+ innings when they've already had to do that a number of times this season, that's what they were looking for with Michaelis there. It didn't even perform poorly in terms of those ABs that allowed the 2 singles. But once he allowed them, it was time to make the move. Gives up the tying hit to Rojas, does Kittredge, and then the home run. Middle, slider, just nowhere for it to be other than over the fence. And that was your ball game. Even though the Cardinals do, mount a little bit of a charge later, it just wasn't quite enough. So now that I've talked about Kittredge, that truly is my rant, and I'll start reading some of these comments. David says bullpen ruins another one, and it's unfortunate. By the way, if you're watching on Twitter, that's great. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, go find the YouTube and subscribe to it anyway, because these won't all be on Twitter, but we do have the daily podcast. And this is what this is, by the way. I will upload this. I kind of forgot to do the 3-2-1 what's going on b-schaeff daily thing I always do, but this will be b-schaeff daily for the night, and I'll repost it on all the podcast feeds in the morning for anybody who is going to go to bed because it's 12:30. So I understand that. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the comments. If you're watching on Twitter, feel free to retweet it. The one thing I do wish about Twitter, are there comments that can be had on Twitter, or is that even a thing? Because if not, that's kind of lame. Because there are people watching on Twitter, but I don't know if there's a chat. Is there a chat? If you're watching on Twitter, type something. I don't know if that's even a thing. Elon Musk has to figure this out. I don't know. Someone said Vargas is young, Rojas is old. All right, well, I didn't know their ages. I hadn't looked. But you're right. Rojas is 35. He's been around the block. My bad, guys. And then it messes me up sometimes, too, because there's a couple of Rojases. I once saw Josh Rojas if I'm getting this right. It is Twitter. Forget X. I'm not calling it that. If he can fix the live chat on the stream, and then I'll consider calling it X, but probably still no. Josh Rojas, one time, I was in Round Rock, Texas, because I moved to that area for a little bit in like 2018-19, and I was the Round Rock team at the time was the affiliate of the Rangers, I want to say it was, or maybe the Astros. It was the Astros, actually, because Carlos Correa was rehabbing there while I was there, and Edman Diaz was there. Anyway, Josh Rojas hit a home run off of Mike Myers when Mike Myers was rehabbing that was so deep into center field. I was like, oh, that's probably not what Mike Myers wanted while he's trying to get the attention of the big club to call him back up, because it was one of those rehabs where it was lasting kind of a while. And I remember it was just one of those things after the game. I was like, well, I'm here. I could talk to anybody they'll let me talk to. And who I wanted to talk to, it's a little different in the minor leagues. Like, you couldn't go in the clubhouse as media, but the PR would help you try to get who they could get. And so I tried to get Alex Reyes was injured at the time. I know, surprise. But I was like, well, let's see an update, because he was playing catch on the field before the game. Maybe I could talk to Reyes about what it's looking like and have that be like actually something that people would care about. And Reyes did not want to talk, which understandable. I think that was maybe not. My timelines could be messed up, but that might have been not that long after he did a punch in frustration and broke his hand or something like that. I can't 100% remember exactly what that circumstance was. Anyway, the Josh Rojas home run was so far. I don't even know why I did it, but they said, yeah, Mike Myers will come talk. And I was like, all right, I can ask, about how his rehab's going. And I asked something about the pitch he threw for the home run or something. And he kind of said, he made a comment where he was like, well, it was this or it was that, and the wind kind of got a hold of it. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, instinctively, I did this like reaction where I was like, uh-huh. Like, just kind of like as you're talking to somebody, just like I heard what you said, but he didn't, his reaction was, maybe my eyes told the story that it wasn't the wind that got it, because he was kind of like, what, you didn't think so? And I was like, oh my gosh, I wasn't trying, I'm sorry. You're just trying to get through this rehab. I don't even know why I asked you that. Anyway, that was story time. Let's read these comments. Brett is a subscriber, a member, in fact, on our YouTube channel. He says, the last 2 weeks of Cardinal baseball has been excruciating to watch. It just seems like a team that even if they want to win, they can't seem to figure out how, and any lead is insurmountable. Yeah, I mean, this was different. Tonight, I will say, was different than watching that Red Series. They got thoroughly outplayed in the Red Series. Every game of that series, they got outplayed. They just did. Didn't hit 4 runs in 3 games at Great American Small Park is just not. That's not going to cut it. And the Reds were hammering the ball the whole series, so they didn't pitch that well either. But the hitting thing is the one that should be the most bothersome, I think, because again, and I've talked about this before, coming into the season, the way I viewed it, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but if they were just trying to patch up the rotation just to be good enough, get you some veteran starters that knew the drill, knew how to take the ball 31 times a year, knew how to get you through 6. If that was the goal, they accomplished that by adding Lynn, adding Gibson, and adding Sonny Gray. Like, it was a good plan. It was a reasonable enough plan. I know people said they needed another starter, and probably so, because they should have anticipated that Matz was going to have, some time where he wasn't going to be able to be in the rotation, and that has proven true. But largely, I said, you know what? From where the rotation was last year, that actually seems like a pretty acceptable plan, and Mozeliak went out and executed it really quickly, so you could see the reasoning and the logic behind that, right? At least I felt that way. And you did have some questionable depth behind the starting 5, and it was sort of this notion of, well, we think the starting 5 are going to be able to just take the ball. And it's like, that's really optimistic and great, but it's not going to happen that way. Largely, though, it has. Up until Lynn's recent injury, everybody other than Sonny had that first couple of weeks where he was dealing with the hamstring. Everybody outside of Matz has basically taken the ball and been what they, had largely hoped. Except, performance-wise, Michaelis, obviously, high ERA. I get those things, for sure. But the plan wasn't so bad, but you had to acknowledge that with that plan, another area of your team was going to have to be elite for this Cardinals team to pan out and to make the playoffs, right? Because the way you designed the rotation, it felt like the ceiling was for it to be middle of the pack. And right now, it's in the range of probably 25th in ERA from starters. And that's been a more recent development. They were closer to 20-ish for a while, and they've obviously slid a little bit further recently, and tonight didn't help with that, as Michaelis, I think, had all 5 of his were earned. So, or I guess not all 5 of them. Well, let me see, because that would answer the question, too, about the Jordan Walker play. Because my interpretation of that, and I should have already noticed this, was that the error was charged to Walker because of the guy going from first to second. Yeah, all 5 runs are earned, so that tells you that the error was not negating the earned run. It was negating the guy moving from first to second. So 5 earned runs. Long story short, I'm going to look up the Cardinals starter ERA this season, and it's probably not great relative to the league. That being said, prior to the last few weeks, it was acceptable enough, but again, you have to have some other area of the team that you're elite to be able to account for, okay, you're basically capping your ceiling for your rotation. You got some good, capable veterans, but you're just admitting that it's going to be what it is. We're just trying to make sure the bottom doesn't fall out. Totally get it. The bottom fell out last year. It cost them 71 and 91 because of the bottom falling out of the rotation, largely. They didn't have it, and then Dakota Hudson has to pitch, and then Drew Rom has to pitch, and they didn't have the answers. They didn't want that to happen again. So that was the reason for the plan. But what about the element of the team that's supposed to carry the Cardinals? And I did just find it. It's 24th. 24th in starter ERA, 4.58 this season. That's bottom 6 in the league. Bottom 6, bottom 7 in the league. So it's not great. It's not what you want. But before that, I swear, 3 weeks ago, it looked a little bit better. It didn't look great. It still wasn't even top half, but it was good enough if you account for other areas. Okay, what has to happen if that's your rotation? Bullpen's got to be top 10. Even after tonight, bullpen is still top 10 in ERA, 3.71. So that's happening. But what's the other part that has to happen? Well, you probably have to play really good defense. You have to take advantage on the bases. You have to do all the little things because you're baking out a plan that has very little margin for error, right? So those things have to happen too. What's the big thing that has to happen? You have to have a damaging offense. Cardinals talked a lot. Ollie talked a lot about it. The offense is going to be damage-inducing. In spring, that was the vibe. That's how they felt about it. Right now, they're tied for 19th in MLB and OPS. Across 30 MLB teams, they are 23rd in runs scored. And we know the issues with runners in scoring position, although tonight they were 2 for 5, so technically raised that average. And by the way, their average with RISP isn't even all that terrible anymore compared to where they are with OPS and where they were generally. It's actually, believe it or not, gotten a little bit better recently. They were 29th in all the categories, and now I think they're 29th in OPS. Maybe they've gone up a little bit in average. Anyway, the offense had to be top 10, and I came into spring training talking about top 10 might not even be enough to get them in the playoffs. I think now looking at it, it would have been enough to get them in if it was a top 10 offense because they're not going to be, they're 23rd in runs scored, and they are out of it pretty decisively. But if they were 10th in runs scored, I think they would be right in the mix. But I thought at the time maybe they would have to be top 8, top 6 offensively. I also thought there was an outside chance they could be those things. But, and look, if you were one of those people who said coming into the year, offense is going to be no good, first of all, I don't know if anybody could have legitimately said, like, plot it out for me like you would. The fantasy football guys do this. They stat out the whole season for all the NFL players of how many catches they think they'll get, how many rushing yards, how many, all of it, how many touchdowns, to try to figure out like how many fantasy points. An obvious way to do it. Do that for baseball, but with the Cardinals lineup on February 1, I promise you, you're not telling me 690 OPS for Lars Nootbaar. You're not telling me Arenado 700. You might have said, hey, Arenado had a down year last year, 774. He's going to go down to 740 this year. Maybe you'd have said that. Goldschmidt was 810 last year in OPS. You might have said, I think the decline's coming. He's going to go down to 750. I don't know that very many people would have said it would have been this rough for some of these players that it's been, who have been the guys to historically carry this team. I'm skeptical of that, right? And Goldie, by the way, had the home run tonight, was 1 for 3 with 2 runs scored because he also reached via walk. 687 is his OPS right now, right? Goldie was 810 last year, and that was considered a disappointment because he was 980 the year before, and he was the MVP of the league. You would not have predicted 479 for Jordan Walker's OPS. You would not have. You would not have. Mason Wynn, 740. You might have, actually. But that, and he's met or exceeded expectations. Contreras, 850 OPS, was over tonight, but has met or exceeded expectations. Donovan, 733. He's getting closer to what you would have thought. But Gorman, Nootbaar, I mean, you could basically take a 6-pack of the Cardinals, the guys you thought would be the most productive coming into the year, and they've all basically been below expectation. That's how you end up with a team that's in the spot the Cardinals are in, because the starters, even though it's really sunk down recently, have largely been what you thought they would be, what you hoped they could be. And that might not be a high ceiling. It's not. But I'm telling you, they didn't ask for much from that rotation with the way they built it. They built it to, what did I say in spring? They're going to have to win a lot of 6-4, 6-5, 7-6 games. Tonight was one of those games, and the way they were built in February, I thought this is how they're going to have to win. And a lot of people said, well, that doesn't sound like a very good strategy. And those people are being proven right because, well, I guess it's hard to say it's being proven right. It's being proven right, but we're not even seeing that version of the Cardinals offense, typically. Tonight, we saw it. Tonight was kind of what the offense was supposed to be all year. You're not going to score 6 every game, but you should be doing it more often than we've seen the Cardinals do it. And then the bullpen, which has been a strength of yours, gave it up tonight. It was only one guy, but it only takes one guy when these margins are so slim. That's where it's been. That's where it's been. Crazy stat, batting average, the first 25 pitches, 353, and the next 20 was 453. Next 20 was like 653. I don't know who that is even talking about. I should have been able to see the context there. I guess it was Ohtani, maybe? I don't know. Blind Justice did say Miles was strong, so I guess you were talking about Miles. But he was not giving up a 453 batting average to any, I don't know exactly what that comment was. So we move on. Allison says, backyard baseball would be my dream if it came back. Pretty sure I have the CD. I actually know that I have the CD of Backyard Baseball somewhere. Like I think the 1999 version. It might be the 2001 version though. I have to go back and double check. It's somewhere. I even think I know where it is. If my CD, I don't think it's. Wait a second. 1 second. No. I think I know exactly where the CD case is, and it's probably within like a 30-second jog. Like I could run out to my basement and grab it. I think it's in there, and it would almost be funny for the bit to do it, but then everybody would click off of it when they see an empty chair. But the problem is, at least on the computer that I had before, like I put it in, and it just wasn't compatible. It couldn't start it up and run the game. And if anybody knows of an emulator for that game online somewhere, hit me up. Brett says Blaze was the only bright spot about the Birds right now, not just because he had a little thump to his bat, but because he genuinely is the future of the team. I can only hope Walker and Scott II catch up. Yeah, man, Mason Wynn's the real deal. I don't think there's any anything more to say about that. No doubt about it. And look, they do. They need other people to step into their roles because he has. You think back to the way we thought about his role in the beginning of the spring. It was like, all right, the Cardinals clearly didn't sign another shortstop. Crawford came later after we knew that Wynn would be the guy. And it's like, you look at Wynn's numbers, he got a cup of coffee last year and didn't do a lot, but the Cardinals had the confidence that he was going to excel and to do what he's always done at every level of the minors, just kind of get his feet wet and then take off, and that's what he's done. So it's certainly a credit to him. They played well tonight. It's just hard after the way the season's been going. Allison, you hit the nail on the head. This would not be the kind of game that would inspire very many people to come onto a live stream and comment and be upset if the Cardinals were even 3 or 4 games above 500. It would be like, all right, that's kind of annoying. You lost to the Dodgers, but you could see that they had some good elements of this game. There are no moral victories at this point in the season. You don't have time for them. You don't have time or space on the calendar for them. Brian says Walker put some good swings on the ball today, just went right to them. And then he said, never mind, Scott, not Walker. Yeah, Victor Scott took some good swings. Jordan, not maybe quite as much, but I'm not going to necessarily go through each and every guy in the lineup. But yeah, Victor Scott, it's that play in the 6th, too. I mean, close to the warning track on Kiermaier. I thought maybe he was going to have a little trouble getting it, but he got to it. He's a great defensive center fielder. And, I mean, again, the margin is Victor Scott catches the ball in the 2nd. Jordan Walker nails the guy. Impajes, makes the tag at home in the 2nd. Maybe Victor gets a little bit more lift on that ball in the 6th. Like, slim margins. The ball that Will Smith hit to shortstop maybe is hit a little more direct and is able to turn into an out. Will DeBeast says, go Dodgers. We do have some Dodgers fans in here tonight. Yeah, there were margins that it could have happened and it didn't happen. It's just one of those games that's tough. It's tough to have at this point in the calendar when you're 60 and 62. And now the Cardinals, I mean, if they lose another game, they can't even win 100. So what was the point of any of it? See if I can find some more comments here. Brian Jordan was on the cover of an MLB video game. Adam says, I don't know what game that would have been, but let me know if you know. Allison asked, do we think anybody should have pinch hit in the 9th? Not really. I get it. You could always kind of look at some of those decisions and second guess them a little bit, but I get it. At that point in the game, and Victor had been taking good swings throughout the game, right? So that would be maybe the guy that you would say, all right, do we believe Gorman can pop one somehow, one way or another? Do you believe, I don't know. I think it was a little bit, it felt like that game almost ended in the 6th inning where Dodgers score 5, Cardinals punch back, credit to them, but they didn't get over the hump there. And after that, the bullpenning begins. Dodgers are able to throw their back end. Kopech is working out for them. Phillips had been their closer. That kind of hurts me in fantasy that he's not anymore. Phillips, Joe Kelly, and Kopech, clean. No hits allowed by any of them, just 2 walks. And you can't start a rally with walks. You got to have somebody put the ball in play, make something happen. Brian asks, is it just me or does anyone else think Ahmed Rosario would be nice to have at this point? He's got 3 days left until decision time. Just saying. Yeah, I mean, there's a case to be made that he would look nice as a backup infielder and he could play some shortstop. I don't know offhand the defensive prowess of him at the shortstop position anymore. Maybe a couple of our Dodgers fans that are watching could weigh in if they saw he was only with them for a little bit. Traded for him and then DFA'd him. Despite the fact that, he didn't do a lot with the Dodgers, but his season-long numbers are still good. I'm aimlessly scrolling Baseball Reference. I was going to look at something. What was I going to look at? Oh, I was looking for his splits because I think he hits lefties decent, too. Yeah, he's got an 816 OPS against lefties this year in kind of a sizable amount of time, 110 at-bats, or plate appearances, rather. 702 OPS against, this can't be right. Is that really his numbers? It's crazy this guy got DFA'd by the team that had just traded for him. But I also guess, who could maybe be taking the spot soon is Edman, if he can come back and be healthy for him. Take a look. I know he had a few games played at Oklahoma City, Tommy did, and was starting to kind of catch his stride a little bit at the plate. Don't know defensively what he's been up to, though. He's played now 5 games. And it's going well. With the Dodgers affiliate, he is hitting .333 with a .444 on base and slugging .533. And 2 days ago, hit his first home run. Checking this out on MILB.com. I want to see where he's played. He played in center field on the 15th. So there you go. Tommy Edman has been looking really good in the minors for the Dodgers, which we kind of figured would happen, right? But yeah, they got Kopech in that trade too. That was part of the Tommy Edman trade. They got Kopech back from the White Sox. I thought Kopech would be a good target for the Cardinals. They had other things they were looking to do. Eric Fetty, that's who they wanted to bring in, not just for 2024, but for next year as well, because he's cost controlled. Our Dodgers fans are saying Ahmed is good. Yeah, I was a little surprised to see the DFA with him. Edman could play center field soon. Yeah, but Kiermaier looked pretty good tonight, didn't he? The numbers this year offensively for Kiermaier are not great. But and Benjamin says getting beat by Kiermaier is embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, he came into the night with a 544 OPS, I believe it is, on the season. 4 home runs. All were against righties, but you're not planning your pitching moment to say if you don't get Miguel Rojas, you're going to have the wrong split against Kiermaier, who even against righties has a low OPS this year. So that's not really what you're managing toward anyway, so no second guessing on that. If anything, it's maybe Ryan Fernandez ahead of, going ahead of Kittredge in that spot to kind of rescue an inning. Kittredge, to my recollection, and it's just anecdotal, has not been particularly great in those fireman situations. Early in the year, he was great no matter what. More recently, like I think about the Rickwood Field game, I think he came in for Palante and gave up some of those inherited runs. And obviously tonight was an example of that. Maybe Kittredge a little better with a clean inning, but like I said, that's anecdotal. I'm admitting that that's anecdotal. I might not have the full scope of that one. But anyway, that's what's going on. Dodgers got away with robbery in that trade. Nobody believed me. That's what Mike said. Yeah, I mean, they did fine. They gave up the prospects, and we didn't really know who those prospects were. They weren't any top prospects necessarily. I think one of the guys was even injured that went to the White Sox. Kopech, I said when that trade happened, it was if you can bring a reliever like Kopech would be great, but the Cardinals didn't give up any prospects at the deadline. And I think that was by design because the way that they made the trade deadline happen is, add Fetty for the now because Lance Lynn. They kind of already knew about the Lance Lynn thing now that we know was going to be on the come. But you also have Eric Fetty for next year, cost controlled. And I think that was just as big of a motivator. Yes, Tommy Pham, his part of the acquisition was for the here and now. But otherwise, they didn't make any trades for the here and now at the deadline. They didn't trade away prospects at all to do any of the things that they did. Trading Carlson away for Armstrong was simply to get rid of Carlson. It had the dual purpose that you also could then say, hey, we got a reliever. But that wasn't really like go get a big name reliever. Granted, Armstrong was great last year. They haven't really trusted him for leverage, right? Like they weren't bringing in Armstrong in the Kittredge spot tonight in the 6th. And always talked about all the guys that have been worked. And it's like, well, Armstrong, has he been worked as much? Maybe they could have, but I just don't think he is in that slot in the bullpen. That's not how he's viewed, at least not yet. Maybe he could earn that. He has to earn the trust of the staff. And another guy that was mentioned by one of my Kevins on Twitter who said, it's kind of weird to option Riley O'Brien once he's healthy when you're talking about not really having a lot of great options. Because I think he had tweeted at me kind of blaming Ollie for Kittredge blowing up. And I said that they're not really teaming with great setup men and middle relief options right now. And he said, well, Riley O'Brien's just sitting down there. And that's fair. I mean, Riley O'Brien has done a nice enough job in Memphis. I know back from spring training, we thought he had the live arm that could project to be a leverage kind of guy. And I think John Mozeliak probably daily right now has to be evaluating, like, is he giving Ollie the best relievers that the organization has to offer? It's fair to ask if we've seen it from Kittredge and Ollie was kind of out front about Ryan Fernandez having a stretch where he didn't look as good and then said tonight looked better. But like, if that's how he feels about his 2 top right-handed relievers that aren't Helsley, maybe they got to shuffle the deck a little bit. I don't know. We can always grasp at these answers, but I think bottom line, the simplicity of it is you're playing the toughest portion of your schedule and you have to be great against it or you're not making the playoffs. And it's like, that's almost like freeing in a way, right? Where you don't have to, there's nothing to talk about. You just have to go beat these teams. Does anybody notice it's a little silly, maybe a little disrespectful. I put the Cardinals hat upside down behind me. The infamous Sonny Gray, mint green, what do they call it? Mint gum pack from New Era. I thought it'd be a little silly. Put it upside down for anybody that was going to spot that. In the old background tonight, Wildebeest says, all the trades are pretty great for the Dodgers, not going to lie. Love how they pick up players without giving up good prospects. Yeah, they do a pretty good job. They do a pretty good job historically, don't they? Over there in La La Land. They do a good job with that. BC asked me if I covered the 2021 wild card game in LA. I did not. I've never been to LA. It was under consideration, but then I made the decision. My wife and I, now this is going to sound bad, but 2021, remember, that was the year the Cardinals had 17 in a row in September. It wasn't really looking like it was. Brian, what are you saying? Augie did the same thing on Twitter tonight. What did Augie do? All right, back to my story. 2021 wildcard game. One of our Dodgers fans, our friendly Dodgers fans, asked, I wanted to go to LA. I wanted to go. It was one of those deals where I'm like, if the Cardinals should win that game, they're going to have another, I think it would have been to San Diego. Maybe they would have gone next. It's going to be a longer playoff stint than one game. And so I kind of hedged my bets and said, I'll try to go cover if they go to the next round, I'll try to, ask KMOV, hey, can you send me? I didn't ask about the wild card game, the one game, but I also had my wife and I scheduled a trip to D.C. for that weekend or whatever. Well, I think it was a weekend. We're Washington, D.C. And it was like, at the time, it was like, I think we're going to be fine. The Cardinals are kind of struggling. And then they won 17 in a row. So we actually watched the end of that game when Chris Taylor hit the home run off of Alex Reyes from a Cardinals bar in Washington, D.C., believe it or not. We were walking by, and I'm like, there's a lot of Cardinals fans in that bar. Like, I was just looking for a place to watch the end of the game. First place we went was a karaoke place that I wish I could remember the name. Every time I go to D.C., I've been to this bar because I love karaoke. That's something you need to know about me. And I wanted to do karaoke, and the game was on in the corner. But then eventually it was like, all right, let's kind of walk back toward our Airbnb or wherever our hotel we were staying at. And as we're walking, I'm like, we got to find a bar to watch the rest of this game. And it was a Cardinals bar. And I was really hoping the Cardinals would pull that one off the night the Dodgers, hit Chris Taylor walk-off, because I just knew it was going to be such a cool scene in that bar. People would have been going nuts, and I would have just been able to kind of take it in and be like, wow, this is kind of a cool. But gosh darn it, that didn't happen, right? So, and I was also kind of selfishly like, I'd like to go to San Diego or whatever's coming next, and I wanted to cover a longer postseason. I wasn't doing YouTube then at the time. Now you want to see as a YouTube guy, you want to see long postseason run, because let's face it, Cardinals fans are going to be more interested in what we're talking about in October if the Cardinals are still playing. That just makes sense. By the way, Dylan Carlson did hit home run number 3 as a Ray tonight. That was something else I wanted to make sure to mention. Which remember the game that Dylan Carlson kind of majorly blew it and it was very bad. But I said I'll buy everybody's Dylan Carlson stock. This is what I meant. I was buying it at its lowest. Last 15 games, he's OPSing like 900. That's all I'm saying. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel, but we've seen an outfielder leave St. Louis and become a lot more manageable, like just decent, right? He didn't have to be great. I think Carlson's going to carve out a just fine career. So anyway, how's Lance Lynn doing? Will the Beast wants to know. He's on the injured list right now, but he's largely been what they thought he would be, just kind of, going to take the ball until he was no longer able to take the ball. He's dealing with a knee. We'll see if he's able to make it back here before too long. But he's been fine. I don't know if the Cardinals will or won't pick up that option for next year. I tend to lean toward probably not, but nothing would necessarily surprise me, and it could depend on if he returns and how he returns toward the end of the season. Him and Gibby both, Kyle Gibson, have those options for next year. BC asked if I'm a Chiefs fan. I was a St. Louis Rams fan, diehard, and they moved out to y'all in L.A., and so I'm no longer a Rams fan. I don't really have a team. I like the Chiefs just fine. I like the Lions. Those are kind of two teams. But the beauty of it is neither of them can ruin my day with a loss unless I've got money on them, which in the case of the NFC Championship game, I did have the Lions, and that was tough. But anyway, yeah, I couldn't root for the Rams anymore. For people who have watched me for a while, I've told this story, but I was a diehard fan, and I get it. When they left L.A. for St. Louis, you said, so they came back. I wasn't alive the first time. I was born in 94, so I just only remember the St. Louis Rams. And so when they went back, That was a hard day for me. I always loved the Rams. I remember the real Super Bowl championship in 2000, not your Mickey Mouse one in 2021. But but when they moved, it was like, I'll try to root for him, I guess. I waited. I didn't have a lot of people said, "Oh, I swore off the NFL for good." I was like, let's watch that first game. And I was playing intramural flag football or intramural soccer at Stankowski Field at Mizzou. They played the Niners on like a Thursday night or something to open the season, their first game in LA. And I saw the box score and I saw they were getting their asses kicked. And I was like, good. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to be able to root for them anymore. But then even during the season, a lot of their players I would root for. I'd be like, all right, this is fine. But then the first year when they got to the playoffs, played the Falcons, I was like, nope, not ready. And then by the time Greg Zuerlein, a St. Louis, he was on the St. Louis team, hit the field goal to send the Rams to that Super Bowl, the one that they lost to the Patriots, I was like, when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, Greg Zuerlein. And then I realized what it meant. I was going to have to watch the Rams in a Super Bowl. And that Super Bowl, a lot of people say it was the worst Super Bowl, so boring. Couldn't have been better for me because I wanted the Rams to lose to the Patriots, who I hate, an ugly Super Bowl. It could not have been. I had a great time watching that Super Bowl. And then, of course, they beat the Bengals, and I was on the Bengals that day. Anyway, enough Rams talk. Any other Cardinals comments? Anything I've missed? I know I've missed a few. Let me scroll up and see if there's anything from our members. Rena said ESPN app is showing Miller. So, yeah, it'll be Bobby Miller. I'm sure they probably, Roberts probably announced that after the game. Space Magic Storm said may have been a loss, but it was still a fun game. I was walking to my car tonight thinking this exact thing. It was a fun, genuinely good baseball game. It was. Like, in a vacuum, if the Cardinals weren't dealing with all this crap of feeling like the season's lost and the whole structure of the organization has to fundamentally change, which may be the case, it was a good game. Like, legitimately. I know that's a hard thing to probably, you're too close to it right now to really feel that way, but I'm with you. I hear you there. I don't know what the joke is about Augie's post on Twitter, but I love Augie, so I don't know what he said, but if I did the same thing as him, then I'll consider that to be an honor. We'll go with that. Somebody mentioned Newt Bar in here, and I can't find the comment now. Brian wants to know, why does it seem like they play good against great teams if they play the level of subpar teams? That one has me flummoxed. Yeah, they play down to their competition this year. I don't think that's even debatable with the way that the results have gone. I think we've kind of seen that a little bit. And that's why I predicted the sweep coming in. I said the Cardinals could sweep these guys. And I thought it was going to be because they would raise the level of their competition because they're playing a better team. And frankly, that's what they did. They did do that, but not quite to the level on the pitching side that they needed. I mean, if you look at where that Kittredge pitch was, that's a tough one to take. That's a tough one to see against a guy who has just not been able to hit very much this season in Kiermaier. That's a mistake, and it's a 3-run mistake, and it happens because the Michaelis hits that he gives up are just kind of dinkers, and we talk about the soft contact. The question I asked Michaelis was, is it frustrating to not be able to, to know that it ended on a pitch that you executed, and then that's the way your night ends? And it really, I can't say it wasn't his fault, but it had to be a frustrating thing. And he said, yeah, I'll get over it eventually, but anytime the night ends on the wrong note, it's something that lingers with you. We got a good number of viewers here on Twitter. If any of you guys have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, you type in youtube.com/@b-schaefer12 or just Google my name, Brenden Schaeffer, YouTube. Subscribe to the football one too. If you're watching on YouTube, I don't care if you're a football fan. Help me out. Subscribe. It's in the description to this live stream at the very bottom. It says, help Brenden, I think is what I put. I'm trying to get that channel up. I'm going to be doing some more live streams like I did on Tuesday night. We'll still be doing Cardinal stuff for sure, but that's something that's getting hot and heavy for football season, and I'm trying to get that to join the partner program like I've been able to do for the Cardinal page. So if you guys care at all about football or just want to help me out, hit the subscribe on the b-schaefer FFB fantasy football channel. That'd be sick. This comment, I don't know the name. It's a Twitter comment with just eyes, fingers, and a tongue. And I said that in the wrong order because that doesn't sound good. But this individual said, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Your Cardinals woes parallel my poor socks. Also looks like Naughton is done for the season again. That's no good. So we got a Red Sox fan in here reporting Packy Naughton news, and obviously the Boston kid, Packy Naughton, but I have not seen anything as far as Packy Naughton more recently. So I don't know exactly what's been up with him recently. I guess I could find out. Try to find out. But yeah, that's no good. Like he's been I hope it was another injury. This is the first I'm hearing of it though. But he's been, down there in the minors. Remember, they outrighted him off of the active roster last year after the injury. And yeah, he hasn't pitched in a while. So I have admittedly not been keeping tabs, but that is unfortunate because he was effective for a while, if that's the case. Shortage of furniture there, Haas. I don't know why you'd say that, Bob. There's a bed behind me. This is the office / where we have the second bed. And the furniture, there's a hat rack back there. I don't think I need any other furniture than that. There's like shelves to the side of me, but that's just off the picture. You can't see those. I can't help that. BC is looking for a Dodger sweep. That's no good. Do you think the Cardinals' approach to the plate is hurting them? Seem to be more patient versus aggressive. I think they just get in between too often on exactly what they want to be. Tonight, though, I felt like their approach was pretty good. And Marmol said the same thing. And I agree with it. I think they took a good approach against a lefty. People would say, oh, the only way they score is the home run. That's not true. They hit 3 home runs. And by the way, home runs aren't bad. If you only score on the home run, but you hit 3 of them in a game, that can work if you get some guys on base ahead of them. There was one guy on for Goldie on the walk, but they did have the 6th inning where they were able to get some rally stuff too. So they did a little bit of both. They scored 6 runs. I mean, they should have won that game. Got a comment on Christian Yelich. Done for the season. Yeah, that was as of a couple of days ago. So he tried to not have the surgery, and now he's having it. Yeah, Kevin. I mean, it doesn't really seem to matter, does it? It's not bothering the Brewers none. And it's unfortunate that the Cardinals can't take advantage of, a team. Like, credit to the Brewers. At a certain point, we do just have to give the Brewers credit, but the Cardinals should be in a better spot than they're in. I think both of those things can be true. Levi said, score runs, pitching stinks. They get good pitching, and then they can't score. Yep. They haven't been able to piece it together, and the margins are slim, right? The margins are slim to be able to have that success, and it's not been able to be something the Cardinals have put together consistently and match it up, where offense, hitting, bullpen does it all on the same day. Sometimes they have 2 of the 3 and they can overcome it, but those margins are slim. And tonight, there was just enough things that happened that didn't go their way that you look at it and go, yep, they weren't going to be able to get over the hump because didn't quite make the extra special play defensively in the 2nd inning. Didn't find a way to rally with anything in innings 7 through 9 against a good back end of the bullpen. 5th inning had the little dinkers that didn't go their way. I told them I didn't unplug my mic, but they think I did. I think we're back. I'm having some equipment issues sometimes too. That's just been a thing. Thank you though for the finger pointing guy. Anyways, just popping in. Keep up the great work. Good night. Be-schaeff. Yeah, it'll be good night to everybody soon. It's 1 a.m. For being 1 a.m., a lot of good viewage here. That's not a word. On Twitter. Again, to those folks listening in or watching on Twitter, I wish that Elon Musk would kind of prioritize what my broadcast feature looks like. But anyway, would love to see perhaps the sorry, I was still looking at the Packy Naughton stuff. I'm behind on Packy Naughton stuff, obviously. Right? Anyway. What I was going to say is subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are on Twitter watching this and you're like, all right, if this guy's talking about the Cardinals like every night, because I have been, then head on over to YouTube, youtube.com/@b-schaefer12. But other than that, I think it's probably about time to call it unless there's any more comments. Mike says, I don't think it's fair to let the rotation off the hook. Everyone who looked at this rotation objectively going into the year knew balls were going to start flying out when the temperatures rose. Yeah, Mike, I mean, look, I'm not saying the Cardinals have a great rotation. I'm saying we knew going in that they were asking the bare minimum of the rotation because last year's rotation didn't do that. They didn't even accomplish that. So now lately the rotation's a problem. And on the year, they're 24th in ERA, so that's not good enough. But my point was they could have been 19th in ERA, and that could have been enough if the offense did its job, which was to be top 10. The way the roster was constructed, they didn't. And if you gave them truth serum, they wouldn't have told you, yeah, we think we have a top 10 rotation. They just couldn't have said that. Nobody thought that, right? And so that's okay if you have the other elements of the team that are going to make up for it. And that's where they're lacking. I question their plan for starting rotation because, honestly, I didn't question it too much, but I said, if that's going to be your plan, you have to acknowledge that the other parts of the team have got to be great because you've settled almost for a rotation that's going to be solid at best. And it's largely been that until recently. But that doesn't leave room for the upside of the rotation to carry you. And some teams have rotations that can carry them. The Cardinals have gotten maybe more out of their rotation than some people thought they would until recently. But the offense to me is the spot that I keep circling over and over. K. Neelio says, I thought the blast to dead center from Scott might put them ahead, put him in a solid spot, just not our year again. Yeah, off the bat, I thought that ball might have carried for Scott, and it just didn't. So, all right, guys, I'm going to call it. It's 1:08 a.m. I appreciate y'all who have watched, who have tuned in on Twitter. I'll throw these on Twitter from occasion, time to time, but when I don't do them live, you won't see them unless you're on YouTube or Spotify. Just search on Spotify, B-Schaeff Daily. You can find the podcast every day over there, too. That's where we put philosophical differences as well with Josh Jacobs of Dealing the Cards. So we do all that. It's been daily Cardinals content. You can look. I have receipts. Scroll the YouTube channel. There's basically something on this channel every single day. So that's something that you won't really find anywhere else. But appreciate you guys, as always, for watching, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily and B-Schaeff Daily Live. Peace.